Hello everybody, I am Jack, and today we are going to be exploring the world of the latest hit game, Schedule 1, a game that has taken the internet by storm. And I'm going to attempt to find out why that is, and some of the struggles that the game has gone through in the short time it has been out, and even look at the impact that Schedule 1 could have on the greater gaming world, including a possible downfall of AAA game studios as we know them. But before getting into all of that, it's time to look at the game itself, and where better to start than the team behind the game. The game was made by a single person named Tyler and his single person game studio TVGS, or if you could guess, Tyler's video game studio, based out of Sydney, quite possibly the second best media to come out of Sydney since Bondi Rescue. The game being released the 24th of March and since then skyrocketing to one of the most played games on Steam. Currently sitting on around 250,000 players, a game that was made by 3 people. Tyler doing all of the game design and coding and getting some help in for the game's music and the street art or graffiti around the city. A little side note I want to add, I feel good street art really helps the world feel more real. Not just for games but other media as well. A city without graffiti just feels like it's missing something. Unless they are going for sort of like the futuristic authoritarian city. But then I feel the lack of graffiti also adds to its unsettling nature. But bringing it back to player count, as I mentioned, this game at most days is sitting well within the 200,000 player mark. Now, to get a true understanding of how amazing that is, let's take a look at a franchise that was once near and dear to my heart. As you can probably tell from my profile picture, channel art and name, as they're all inspired by this, that being Assassin's Creed, with their newest release being that of Assassin's Creed Shadows, a game that was made by a very large studio that still exists at this moment. And for so much more money than Schedule 1, with an example, there is a number floating around claiming Ubisoft spent $2.1 million just on content creator marketing, which is most likely under 1% of the total money spent on Assassin's Creed Shadows, and I'm also pretty sure $2.1 million is probably around $2.1 million more dollars than it costs to make Schedule 1. But with such success, there is always going to be someone who is going to try and steal a bit of that success from you. In this case, that would be the indie publishers, Movie Games, who after Schedule 1 gained so much fame after its release announced that they have launched an investigation into Schedule 1, claiming that they are legally obligated to investigate Schedule 1, claiming that since so many people have brought up the game's similarities, they are going to have to launch a legal analysis, which I believe is what Nintendo originally did on Power World, claiming that there are similarities with the plot, mechanics, and UI. So let's quickly break that down and how stupid I personally think these points are. Starting with the mechanics. Now, of course, since they are both games about the dealing and making of drugs, they are likely to share some mechanics. But I would say that Schedule 1 seems more different than other games in the genre, especially other games comparing themselves to DDS or Drug Dealer Simulator, as Drug Dealer Simulator, at least in regrowing, has more points to monitor. Like you have to manage the light, the plant, and the water of the plant, where in Schedule 1 to grow drugs, you literally just have to manage the water and nothing else. And if we're going to be honest, if anything, whoever created the Gmod Dark RP drug dealing jobs could probably sue all of these games if that is the case. And at least from an outward facing view, the UIs are very different. Like, I don't even know where that point would have come from. And same with the plot. Now, I'm going to talk about the story of Schedule 1 soon, but there is not much of one at this point. A lot of the story relies on headcanon. And I don't know DDS story. I only ever played the demo, and the demo didn't really catch my attention. So I did not end up buying the game, which maybe means I cannot talk to these, but I've watched gameplay on YouTube. I've Google imaged some pictures of the game, so that's probably about what they did before launching the lawsuit. Sorry, their legal investigation. But the story for Schedule 1 is also pretty generic for the most part, and I doubt there is anything behind this investigation. And if it does end up going to a lawsuit or arbitration in any way, I think that would be a horrible thing for self-published games. Imagine spending years of your life to release a game and then the threat of a lawsuit from an indie publisher looming over you. Or, in Palworld's case, a bit more of an indie developer. But at the end of the day, I think movie games are most likely jealous that this game has taken off far further than any of their DDS games. Especially counting apparently they hadn't even looped in drug dealer simulators developers that they are doing this. But that's enough about something that we all hope does not end up happening. And now I can finally talk about everything I like about the game of Schedule 1, starting with the movement, which is quite possibly the best thing about this game. It has almost every movement tech from every game ever. You can b-hop, jump, spam, everything. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of brake and curb boosting that just hasn't been found yet. And once you figure it out, the game becomes 1,000 times more enjoyable. Instead of just having to run around the map and hide from the police to do late night deals for extra money, you can easily zip around the map at hyperspeed selling all the drugs to all the people. Which also moves us on nicely to a part of the game that I do not find up to par, and that is the police force. Scary as they are at the start, they become very predictable very quickly, which I understand, that without putting a bunch of time into a lot of custom routes, it has to be hard to make the police seem like a living police force, a complex organism. Or you could probably make AI to come up with patrols. But then you risk them getting stuck in a bush or something stupid like that. And at the same time, TVGS is also working on making the police better with police raid and an evidence room where you can steal back your lost drugs. And according to the game's roadmap, even more in the works. And that is just yet another point in this game that I feel is done perfectly. The fact that the game is being updated, unlike some indie games that are released then never updated again. TVGS is putting in the work to make sure the game is consistently receiving updates, and not just bug fixes but a bunch of new content as well, with a constantly being updated roadmap with what's being worked on, what's being done, and some ideas to be made in the future, which is a lot more than most games I end up buying on Steam. Like, have you guys ever heard of a game called Starforge? It's a game I remember seeing as a kid and I thought the trailer looked pretty cool. And it was one of the first ever indie games that I ever got, and let's just say the disappointment of that game sent me back to only playing COD and Minecraft for another 2 years. But this game is very much what I believe an indie experience should look like, where you can semi-easily find out what the dev is working on with the game, and that the dev is communicating with the community that sprung up around the game. And also, I got busy at work between writing this part of the video and recording the audio for it. And well, in the time that I was busy, the game has received a new update that's come out introducing a new property you can buy and a bunch of cosmetic items as well. But back to talking about that community, this game has a pretty amazing one with modders already picking up the game and making some pretty cool mods, from adding whole new drugs and better police into the game, to my favourite and the only mod I have downloaded, that being the one that makes doors automatically open for you. So what can I say, pressing the E key is just a lot of work for a man like me. But not only that, the community on this game on YouTube is also pretty amazing, as I'm sure we have all seen someone play the game on YouTube. And well, if you somehow haven't, well, you're now seeing this video and I'm playing the game. So you have, and personally I saw a video that was done by Moist Critical on the game, which I'm sure those videos convinced a lot of people to also pick up the game. as he has even been added into the game as a little Easter egg, which also adds to the game's graffiti again. But not only is it YouTube that is spreading the word about this game, as someone from my work mentioned the game to me. We never really talk about games, but yet they chose to bring up this game, and well, if I'm not going to lie, I may have said something along the lines of, oh, what, the game about making drugs? I'm not going to play that. Which I was clearly very wrong about that whole statement. It's a lot more than a game just about making drugs, and well, I have played so much of it at this point. But on the topic of this game being about more than making drugs, what else is it about then? Well, selling drugs, but also, if you are willing to look a little deeper, there is a story hiding underneath the surface. Or at least I think so, but hey, at the same time, it's basically all my headcanon anyways. The game's prologue opens with your character waking up in an RV outside of a ranch owned by your Uncle Willie Nelson. Okay, maybe his name is just Uncle Nelson. But you and him together grow weed in an RV and sell it to the people of Sierra Flats, the closest town to the ranch. The prologue does do a pretty good job at introducing you to the game's most basic mechanics, like how to grow and bag weed, and how to set deals over your phone. Also introducing you to the idea of police searches and how to conceal items in your inventory. But when I first played the game, I was unaware that there was this concealing feature and that the game was trying to show you it. So I ran away from the cops and smoked all the extra weed I had on me before they could search me. But after smoking all of your weed and collecting some things for Uncle Nelson, it's time to return to the ranch. And after giving him some of the stuff, you are then told how to plant weed seeds. And then after planting your next batch of weed plants, it's time to lay your head down for the night. However, being rudely awakened to the sound of sirens, as the police are currently raiding the main building of the ranch. But luckily we are sleeping in the RV and the police have left the RV alone. And also did not block the entrance to the ranch so we can make a swift getaway. And luckily for us, the police did not give chase as you escape to Highland Point, a medium-sized city, as you park up your RV up in a local park ready to attempt to rebuild your family's drug empire. But before you can get started, you receive an anonymous text message from an unknown number telling you to go to a payphone. So after leaving the RV and making your way to the payphone, it just so happens to be Uncle Nelson calling to help you get started in the city, as many years ago he was once a dealer in the city, giving you the location of 3 drop boxes where he kept some spare cash. And luckily for us, the money has not been stolen after all this time, even though the boxes are not really in hidden places. But that sort of luck, the police not blocking in the entrance, the money still being there, well, that can't last forever, and after collecting the last lot of money, a large explosion can be heard in the direction of the RV. And after returning to the RV, you find it blown up with a note on a rock outside that reads, "Welcome to Highland Point. This is our territory. Do not interfere." With the note being signed by one TB. So we return to the payphone where Uncle Nelson informs us that there is a powerful cartel in the town named the Beniz family. I'm probably saying that wrong. Where Nelson sends us to a motel to get a room to lay low for the night. And after that we start to launch our drug empire on the people of Highland Point. But this is basically all the story points we have so far in the game, at least at the time of me writing this, but as I mentioned, stuff has already changed between me writing and speaking this. And I'm sure by the time I've done collecting all the gameplay and editing this video together, even more will change, as this game, as I said, has been constantly updated. The rest of the game, however, is us growing our empire with occasional phone calls from Uncle Nelson guiding us to the next property to buy, the next drug to grow, the next drug to cook, basically guiding you like a helping hand through the lovely world of dealing drugs. But there is a lot more of a story to find if you look just below the surface, or as normal people probably call it, made up canon. Using aspects of the game to come up with a story, even though these parts of the game are most likely just there to make the game more enjoyable. A perfect example of this is the game's curfew. The town of Highland Point has a curfew in place from 9 PM till 5 AM. However, this curfew seemingly only affects you, the player, as all the customers are able to walk right in front of the police and walk by scot-free. Maybe the curfew is just used to stop the dealing of drugs. Like the town used to have a massive drug issue with the Benese family and used the curfew to kick them out of town. As apart from blowing up our RV, the cartel hasn't been heard from. And everyone in this town was very clearly at one point highly addicted to drugs, as they will very easily start buying from you and buying a lot of drugs. So maybe the police have used this curfew to crack down hard on any drugs to get their city clean again. Now, this idea I have in my head, however, it also kind of falls apart when you see your drug dealers you can hire to work under you to sell product for you can also just blow past the cops past curfew, which just enforces that the curfew is only for you. Mainly because the game would get super annoying if all the clients got arrested on their way to the late night deals you schedule for that little bit of extra money. But I have seen a lot of people on the internet thinking the same way as I do, so that might become real. But the only thing we really need to know is who are the Benese and where have they gone? Oh, and what is going on with Uncle Nelson? Did he set us up? ? Like, first of all, what cops do not block a driveway when performing a raid on a ranch? And also, what prison gives its inmates access to a cell phone to text and make calls from, to payphones, and allowing them to do this seemingly at all hours of the night? And I'm guessing these are unmonitored calls, as Uncle Nelson is able to set us up with people to sell us weed, seeds, drug equipment, and even able to contact the city's underbelly to get us in. But once again, this stuff is probably happening to make the game easier and more enjoyable to play. But I do like when I can explain away some of the features in my head. But if all this fake story that I've come up with in my head isn't what you enjoy about the game, there is, well, still well and truly enough stuff for you to dive into. Especially with the mixing of drugs and other items, creating your own custom strand of either meth, cocaine or weed, with around 16 different items you can mix into drugs, and you can even double or triple or quadruple or basically add an infinity amount of the same ingredient to your mix. To make it to the point where you can make mixes that give you an advantage in the game, if that's slowing time or speeding up your character, making you jump higher, even to a low gravity weed that you can smoke. And you are also able to create strands that turn people into aliens or even make their heads explode. Which in hindsight seems like a bad idea to sell drugs to your clientele that will then force their heads to physically explode. But hey, I don't think people can die in Highland Point, which for some people is unfortunate. There's a lot of people who I want to wipe from existence of Highland Point, but that is not a feature. Has that constant use of drugs over the years made them immortal? Or once again, does the creator of the game, Tyler, not want you to just be able to nuke your whole clientele, then walk around and do nothing? Who knows? I think it's the second one. But hey, and before I close off this video, another hurdle has been thrown at Schedule 1. So I thought I would quickly comment on it as the game's creator is based in Australia and I am also in Australia. So the game has currently been removed from Steam in Australia, which I guess isn't an attack on the game per se like the investigation by Movie Games is, but the Australian Classification Agency being, well, themselves. So the game just needs a classification to be sold in Australia. Then it should be back on Steam. But at the same time it only got removed because it's popular enough for them to take notice. So I'm sure there are thousands of Australian developer-led projects on Steam that don't have a classification. But hey, that's Australian classifications, I guess. I just hope the game doesn't end up getting banned in Australia. Like, I'll still be able to play it because I own it, but I think everyone else should also be able to enjoy it, including the Australian populace. Which, if you didn't know though, Australia has a long list of banned games. Some may even surprise you, but that might be a future video idea. I'll write that down somewhere maybe. But anyways, this has been my look at the new hit game Schedule 1. And looking at not just the game, but some of the other aspects, like an indie studio seemingly coming after a solo dev for having a more successful game than them. And in my opinion, how an indie game should be ran, with the developer setting up a roadmap and keeping the player base up to date and engaged in the status of all things Schedule 1. And I mean, it also helps if you make one of the best games I have played in the last couple months, and all on what I assume is a shoestring budget. That was a bit of a tongue twister for me there. But anyways, if you guys have any thoughts on Schedule 1, make sure to post them below in the comments. And also let me know how you found out about the game. If that's from YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, or any other way you may have heard or been clued in onto one of the best games of 2025 so far. Anyways, that's it for me. If you have enjoyed this video and are still watching at this point, maybe consider leaving a like. And if you want to see more videos from me in the future doing reviews on video games and other gaming related topics, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Peace.